Hello, everyone. This is Andres Amiral streaming live from the night hacking stage right here at DevOps Belgium at the HackerGarten space. With me as guests, I have Dan Allen and Hubert Sablonier from Open Device. You might recognize the names because these people have been doing amazing stuff with documentation on the ASCII Doctor project. But today, we want to talk about presentations. I think that you have a couple of demos that will amaze all the people around here. So can you tell us more about what's going on? So I think you said something about a presentation console before we get into the into this. So that's quite interesting.
Sure. So first, we'll start out by saying we're kind of rejecting the traditional presentation tools and saying, what can we do with the web? So Hubert did 2 talks at Devox, and each talk had a different application, basically, that was behind the screen. So he's presenting, and when he's showing up on the screen, both of those were custom designed applications. One was a little bit older, the new presentation console, like 2.5 weeks old? Okay, so we're talking fresh off the press here. And the idea is that if we want to have a better presentation, more engaging experience, we need to treat it like an application. So I think we'll start with a tool that Hubert created called TextArea51 for live coding. So this presentation was about CSS, and you could talk about CSS, and you can say, this is how CSS works, or you could show how CSS works, and this is going to be much more effective. And it's currently one of the top talks at this Devox, and it's about CSS. So we're at Devox, CSS is the #1 talk. And I think that speaks a lot to the fact that it resonated with people. So we'll let him show off some of this tool.
Yeah, so basically I built this tool for Devox France 2015. I wanted to do a talk that's called CSS for Newbies and really address the really simple basics of CSS. And at first I was like, maybe I should use my own editor, and I'm gonna have a few code examples prepared in many files, and I'm gonna go through the files. And I mean, it was a quickie, so 15 minutes, you don't have time to fool around in the project tree. So I thought about using maybe JSBin or CodePen, the few online code editors that exist, because they are really awesome. And at the same time, I wanted to have some kind of slides. So I was like, maybe I can build something that sits in between. So introducing TextArea51, work in progress title maybe. So the idea is that I create projects on this pane. Here I have the talk I did here in Devox Belgium, which is Flexbox, make CSS great again with, or fun again with Flexbox. And so in my...
It was never great to begin with. I'm talking about CSS, by the way.
So in the tool I built, you have first to create a project. So here I have Flexbox and CSS. So let me unzoom. And then you have to create sections. And actually sections are basically slides that you will be able to go through with left and right arrow keys. So you create your sections, and in each section you can create files. So any kind of files, but in this example, there are HTML, CSS, and sometimes JavaScript files. So here I have created an HTML file and 2 CSS files. And if I click here, I actually arrive. So this is a full screen browser. And here what you can see, what you can see if I show the header is the name of my project, the name of the current section, and all the files that are on my section. And if I press next here, or if I do it with my keyboard, I can go through my slides, which I call sections. And actually I have a set of keyboard shortcuts for each slide. So as I can see in my header that I don't display during live coding, all my files are numbered. So index HTML is 1, color CSS is 2, and index CSS is 3. So I can display using 1, 2, and 3. I can display 3 code editors. And then with Alt 1, Alt 2, and Alt 3, I can display live rendering with an iframe of the content of the file. So here I only do Alt-1 to present the final HTML that is on the left. And if I press Alt-2, I'll have an iframe presenting a CSS which has nothing really interested to do, so I don't do it. But I can, and it's very interesting. So what's great is that I can prepare a few code examples to show, and when I need to just display titles, diagrams, I just have to build a slide and never display, the code editor. Never display the code editor. And when I only have one pane, as you can see, the borders that are around disappear completely. So then I just have to remove my working header, and then it just looks like a slide. So I can press next. I explain my story about CSS. So there's this guy doing Java, this girl doing C, C++. They all want to learn about stuff. And he is a full stack developer, and despite the fact being a full stack developer, he doesn't master CSS. And that's when I arrived. So as you can see here, I have the final result from last Monday. But what I can do, if I go back to my project, I can import a project, and I can actually do snapshots. So I just have to load the snapshot that I do before starting the presentation to have all the different example at the correct starting point. So then it is the starting point. And during that, at that time in the talk, I just press 1 to display the CSS editor, 2, sorry, and I start to fiddle around. So what you can see on the left is a text area enhanced with Code Mirror, which is a project for the web to add color syntaxing, live editing, and many kind of things. You just had to add plugins. So here I have keyboard shortcuts to play on the numbers. I have all my shortcuts to remove lines, to duplicate lines, etc. And then on stage, I explain about Emmet, which is a CSS shortcut system. So I can just do text align center and do tabulation, which is great because it works in my tool, but it works in IntelliJ, in Atom, in any editor. And I also added the plugin to do autocompletion. That's where I can make fun of people only using autocompletion and trying to vertically align stuff with CSS because it says vertical align, but it actually doesn't work like that.
People with ADD, right?
Yeah, with autocomplete driven development. So I had lots of fun with that tool because, as you can see, each slides I have prepared a few examples. I start by showing the HTML. I just have to press 1 and 2 at the same time to hide the HTML and show the CSS. And I mean, at that point, you have to be a shortcut master because there's really a gymnastic of playing to display that pane, to hide it, etc. And here, it's just an editor. I've hidden the CSS and the HTML, but we use it as a slide, and we actually.
You're getting more mileage out of that animation. That's what it is.
We actually spent 2 hours in the plane and the train to build that animation that we are showing, like for
3 seconds.
But it works. I mean, the audience need that kind of recreation to trigger emotion. I'm not a doctor, but I really see that it works, adding some more fun and stuff to help people listen to you. And so then at the end of the talk, I did some crazy stuff because I have, just like IntelliJ, the Alt-J shortcut, which can do multiple selections. So I do multiple selections to, So I do multiple selection to select THANKS. I do Control-C, I remove a line, and then I can just do, again, a multi-cursor, move the cursor, and just paste it. And then I have thanks in my slides. I just need to add the, do you have any questions? and remove the pane, and voila. And it actually really worked on Monday, and I think that's why people connected, because I wasn't fooling around with an editor. I was just showing Flexbox working with a few enhanced animations. So that's the first tool we wanted to show.
And in a way, I mean, the slides themselves were an application of Flexbox because the thanks is written using Flexbox. So here we're kind of demonstrating by eating your own dog food, so to speak.
Yeah, this looks pretty interesting now. I have to confess that people that know me, they know that I am a desktop guy. And we have JavaFX on the desktop. And JavaFX has something that looks like CSS. It's not a standard CSS. It's not CSS3. It's something like a subset of CSS to 1. And it will be very interesting to see a tool that behaves like this. And I definitely will have a much further look into what you guys have done with TextArea51. Is it available somewhere in a GitHub repository? Is it open source?
So the story is we are definitely open source, I mean open device. But this tool has been built like at night, and I mean after 2 a.m. for Devox France 2015. This year I wanted to do this talk and to do another version that I could open sourced. But so I did many improvements, but I got caught up with time, so finally I got back on the previous version, and at some point I really want to remove everything that doesn't make any sense because it was coded only by me for me during nights. So we are planning on the next few weeks to do a bit of cleaning and maybe open source, just to have some people saying this is great, this is not, maybe I can fix that, etc. So yeah.
Perfect. And so you mentioned that you have another tool that you want to showcase.
Yeah. So the second tool, let me just.
So I'll introduce while you're bringing it up. So we're working on a new framework called Bespoke. And if you know Reveal.js or Deck.js, then Bespoke is equivalent in some ways. But what's different about it is that while those frameworks were monoliths, they're just an all-in-one, give you a presentation framework. Bespoke is more of a plugin ecosystem for creating HTML5 presentations. So every single feature that you have in the presentation is being provided by a plugin. Matter of fact, the core doesn't even know how to change slides. It only keeps a collection of slides and knows about actions. And so something has to actually do something on the next and previous action. And one of the plugins is to add a CSS class to the previous and next slide, so you can do something with CSS and actually make a slide. But the point is you can gut it all the way down to the base and build it your own. So one of the we got it all working, and it was able to do more than Reveal, and that's great. But then it didn't have a presenter's console. So we thought, well, we'll take the one from DZ Slides, and I'll just make a plugin, and we'll add that in. And what we realized is that we're thinking about this the wrong way. Is that the presentation console is not a plugin for the presentation. The presentation console sits at another level, and as a matter of fact, it's the presentation that's the payload. And the presentation console is actually the application. Because when you have a presentation console, like in Reveal, you press a button and you get a presentation console popping up. But why do you want to have it on the same screen or the same computer as where the presentation is? What if you want to separate them? Well, they're kind of hooked together. So, and how do we send information out to clients? And okay, so we'll get into all that. But basically, we realized, wait a minute, there's no way the presentation can know about all this stuff. We need to think about it the other way. So Hubert said, what if I create a new console and we make it so that it can control a bespoke presentation, and where do we go from that? So that's kind of where we are here, and about 2.5 weeks ago or so, Hubert started to put this together. Now obviously we've worked on other presentation consoles like in DZ Slides and Bespoke, so we already knew how other ones worked, but we didn't ever take this approach. So I'll let you go.
You may see that, as Dan said, you have to separate the tool that you use to present and the tool that you use to build the materials. And you can compare that to being our console, to being like some kind of VLC for your slides. It's the player, and maybe you created the video with any other tool. At first, it will work really well with Bespoke, but it could work with anything. So how does it work? So basically, it's just a web page. So what you can see right now is two iframes on the left to display the current slide and the next slide, and then a pane that displays your notes. And you can see that we are really focused on writing our whole speech for a presentation. We really think it makes a difference to have a great storytelling, to have prepared in advance exactly the best word to transmit your thoughts. So we designed, I've worked on several presentation console on Dizzy Slides, etc. And it's the first time I'm giving so much space for the speech. It's really like a teleprompter. And so the other interesting thing we came with is build it with a modular architecture. So everything here is a component. So
Microservices?
yeah, it's a bit like that. Yeah, buzzword. So basically, the iframe in the top left corner is just a component, and it's used twice. So as you can see, the iframe viewer is just the same component. It's just that the second one is configured to have a shift of one step. So it has one step ahead on the global presentation. And that's where you are, well, I've built a few components, and people will be able to build anything. People can have maybe like the third slide on their screen, but they also can think of it as a framework for authoring too. I mean, when I build HTML presentation, I have this huge screen, like 32 inches, and I want to display many, like a grid of 4x4 slides. And I want to just fiddle around on the CSS on my laptop and see everything
You want to show that?
live rendered, you know. So what you see there is what I have on my laptop when I present. And I also have another page which should be there that's synced with the main page. So the screen is a bit small, but what we can do is maybe do this. Yeah, whoa, sorry. Yeah, you can't really see the notes anymore, but it should be okay. So
We don't need no stinking presentation notes.
that's a huge debate with Andres and us. So yeah, as you can see, the same component is used 3 times, and everything is synced up with a bus of events. And we're using broadcast channel, which is an browser API standard that's in Chrome and Firefox. It's just like the plastic cups and the wire, you know, like I speak there and you can hear it at the other place. So on this page, the two components have created a broadcast channel named Fubar, for example, and the page on the right too. And so when I press left, everyone is listening to go to the next slide and just jump. So that's why it's really effective. And I can even say to this page, maybe you could have multi equals 3 and trigger a grid of slides of 3 by 3. So let me refresh. Yeah, I don't know why it takes a bit of time to load, but whoa. But the idea is here, and as you can see now, everything everything is synced up, and I can see like 8 slides in advance. I mean, why not? If I'm editing slides, it's really efficient. So I will show after the Zoom stuff, but for now, we also have other components. So the current time is a component, the stopwatch and the timer too. So I can change the initial duration of the talk, and then if I press start on the timer, I just have everything I need. And the setup doesn't have to look pretty, it has to look useful, and it's really efficient. So everything is synced with the notes. You can look in your notes maybe like this, and if I click on the notes that's corresponding to the text I'm looking for, I can click on it and display it. That's really, really, really handy during questions. When you have someone saying, well, I didn't catch what you said like 20 minutes before, you're like, okay, he was talking about this, maybe I can do that. And we can also do it with this. So people should be seeing a Super NES controller replica, which is Bluetooth, so I can do it wirelessly. So apart from the fact that it looks pretty cool on stage, it's really useful. I mean, speakers are using remote controls like the Logitech one, and it's great remote control, but a clicker, it only has 2 buttons. So next, previous, that's it. I have next and previous, okay, but I also have like other 10 buttons, and I can do very much interesting stuff with it. So let me find a slide where it makes sense. So I'll go back and display only one slide here. And for now, I still have to refresh this, but I mean, it was built 2 weeks ago, so sorry. Okay, this is it.
Rome
So we're
was
talking
built in a
about
day.
very alpha version software.
Yeah.
There's no letter before alpha, right?
Right.
But yeah. So as you can see, I hold the remote like this, and it really fits in my hand. I just have to press R to do slide next. I can press L to do previous. You shouldn't normally have to do previous during a talk, but that's another debate. Then I have the special button. So let me just find a slide where I use the special button. It's actually here. So here I'm showing an application in a smartphone screenshot where the important stuff are in the top. So if I press the special button, it zooms on the phone. And what's interesting is that I have an indicator on my screen that the special button is pressed. But on the main screen, you're supposed to have maybe like, sorry, this kind of animation. So I have animations on the main screen like, okay, I'm zooming, I'm going to another stuff, I'm unzooming, I'm unzooming again, then I have several kind of zoom, and it works pretty well with that special button. And on my screen, I don't need the animation, I just need an indicator that the button is pressed. And for now, we've only been using this button. I've tried stuff where this one zooms on the current slide. When you display code examples, it's quite handy if you're a few feet away from the screen. I've used this one to zoom the notes. For now, we disable it, but it's really great. The last thing I want to show with this console is that I use the D-pad to progress the slides only on my screen. And during the question, it's just awesome. So you're like, oh, you asked a question about this. I just have to do this and find the stuff and press next to sync it again. And I mean, it's really nice. As you can see, I also have, so it should be
And to
there.
the audience, that it almost looks like magic. It's because they can't really see what he's doing with his hands when they're asking the question, and then all of a sudden, the slide appears of what they were asking about from that they've seen earlier. And I actually think that there's a model of presenting here, where if everyone's seen the slide once, you know your own slides. They've never seen them, so now they've seen them all once. You almost leave a little bit more time for questions, and you can almost go back and they get to see the slides now in the context of having seen the whole presentation. Maybe that slide makes a little bit more sense to them. So you plan for this a little bit.
Exactly. So I can take back a slide from the presentation, but I also prepare slides for after the question slides. So here in this presentation, I have a grid of progressive web app that I display while I'm waiting for the first question. I also have some Twitter accounts to follow. But if someone is like, oh, is there any quotas on the storage of progressive web app? I can just move there and don't change the current screen. I say, well, there is this this specification that's worked on right now, and I've seen a few people in the audience like, whoa, okay, and what we need right now is to talk about this kind of practice, to have the tools to do it very efficiently, and to spread the word, I think.
Yeah, this actually, I'm very excited about what you can do with this tool, and I can see how the audience can react to a much more interactive presentation, given that you are able to deliver content that they ask and they were perhaps not sure that you prepared ahead. In this case, you did, and you have more. I'm just wondering, is it possible? Because some conferences will ask you to have the slides in such a way that people can consume it later. Maybe it's in a PDF format. Maybe it's in another way. Uh, is this again something that you can give to the audience in like a zip file, and they can play around and do their own exploration, navigation on the slides? Or besides that, can you also deliver a PDF or a static presentation?
Well, of course, given that it's a website, I mean, we publish them, and some of the interactive features may not be accessible to them because they don't know what the key bindings are or whatever, but for the most part, the slides work. The other thing is since the console is controlling and driving the presentation, the console knows about a lot more things than perhaps would have been originally there in the source. So it knows when you switch slides, we can record that information. It can know which slides were shown and which slides were not shown, and so forth. And we can then overlay that back in a post-processing step to generate something that was very custom for that particular audience. I mean, Hubert gave his presentation at Devoxx Morocco on progressive web apps and decided not to do part of the presentation. So those people don't need those slides, they didn't see them. So we can just eliminate that. So it actually gives us more flexibility, I think, than if you were to say to someone, well, give me the export of the PowerPoint presentation, you wouldn't have the ability to do this.
And the other thing we are working on is trying to have one ASCII doc source, or not especially in one file, but I mean a few files.
One repository of
exactly,
information.
that could help you to produce slides and the equivalent of your slides as an article. So yeah, the notes and the speech we prepare is a very oral type of kind of speech, and it wouldn't work as an article. But you have to use the same code examples, some of the same images and diagrams, and that's where it's really interesting. Here you can see my my JWT talk, and here there's a sequence diagram that has several steps. So what we worked on is maybe having some kind of putting up the image at one place in the article, and being able to go through the steps, and not without having to put the separate images on the article, which would be nonsense. Yeah.
All right. Well.
So do you have the that article up?
No.
With the little
Okay.
animation? No. Okay.
Well, Dan, Hubert, thank you very much. This is very interesting. I will definitely be keeping an eye on this, and please make sure to announce when you open source this thing and shout it to the world, because I'm pretty sure there will be more than one speaker that will be interested in having access to these tools.
Definitely. So people can check out Bespoke now, and this will be part of that group of tools, and just follow what we're doing with that.
All right.
And one last thing, because it's only components, Andres will be able to lay out the speaker console without so much space for the notes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Catch you later.